On July 28, 2025, the USS George Washington was cutting through the Timor Sea when a 19-year-old sailor named Jose Antonio Rivera Lynch IV vanished. Nobody saw him fall or heard a splash. By the time his absence was noticed that afternoon, the carrier had already traveled miles from wherever he had gone. The ship weighs 100,000 tons. It carries over 5,000 people, and it was operating in the open ocean, far from any land. The moment the alarm sounded, everything changed. Because in situations like this, every single second determines whether someone lives or dies. What happened next shows exactly how the most powerful navy in the world responds when one of its own goes missing at sea. Now, to understand what made this rescue so challenging, you need to know what was happening that day. The USS George Washington was not just sailing aimlessly through the Timor Sea. It was there for a reason. The ship was participating in Exercise Talisman Sabre 2025, the largest military drill between the United States and Australia. Over 35,000 personnel from 19 nations were running combat scenarios across air, sea, and land. The tempo was high. Ships were maneuvering constantly. Aircraft were launching and recovering around the clock. Rivera Lynch worked on the flight deck as an aviation boatswain's mate. His job involved launch and recovery equipment, which meant he spent his days in what the Navy calls the most dangerous workplace in the military. The deck sits 60 feet above the waterline. That's a 6-story building. One wrong step near the edge, and the fall happens faster than anyone can react. Here's what made this situation even worse. The Timor Sea temperature that day was around 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Weather conditions were clear. Visibility was good. These should have been ideal conditions for a rescue. But there was one critical problem. Nobody knew exactly when Rivera Lynch went overboard. The detection delay meant the search area was already expanding before rescue operations even began. A carrier moving at 20 knots covers approximately 1 nautical mile every 3 minutes. By the time helicopters launched, he could have been anywhere within miles of open water. So what actually happens the moment someone realizes a sailor is missing? The response is immediate and specific. If the person was seen falling, the first crew member shouts, "Man overboard," and points to which side of the ship. That call gets repeated by everyone within earshot until the entire deck knows. Someone has to keep pointing at the person in the water. Continuous visual contact, because losing sight means losing them completely. On the bridge, the officer of the deck activates the GPS Man Overboard button. This marks the exact coordinates. The ship's horn blasts 3 times. Life rings with smoke signals, and strobe lights are thrown immediately toward the last known position. But here's where carriers operate completely differently from smaller ships. They do not turn around. The reason is simple. These ships are too massive to maneuver quickly. Turning takes time. Instead, the carrier relies on air power. If helicopters are ready, they launch within minutes. Speed matters more than anything else. A helicopter can cover miles in the time it would take the ship to even begin turning. But this creates its own problem. Helicopter operations over water are dangerous. Pilots hover low in unpredictable winds. Rescue swimmers jump into the ocean with no guarantee they will find anyone. The first minutes determine everything. What happened next reveals just how massive these operations become. When the alarm went out for Rivera Lynch, the entire carrier strike group shifted into search mode. USS George Washington became the command center. The cruiser USS Robert Smalls and the destroyer USS Shoup joined within minutes. Multiple helicopter squadrons scrambled. The Golden Falcons from Helicopter Sea Combat Squadron 12 launched MH-60 Sierra Seahawks built specifically for rescue operations. The Saberhawks from Helicopter Maritime Strike Squadron 77 brought different capabilities. Their MH-60 Romeo Seahawks carry advanced radar systems designed to detect small objects on the water's surface. 2 Boeing P-8 Poseidon Maritime Patrol aircraft joined the hunt. These planes normally track submarines, but their sensors can scan vast ocean areas, searching for anything that does not belong. Here's the staggering part. The search grid expanded to 2,200 square miles. That's roughly the size of the state of Delaware. For 48 hours, aircraft flew continuous sorties. Ships crisscrossed search patterns. The Royal Australian Air Force contributed planes. The Australian Border Force sent a patrol boat. This was no longer just an American operation. The costs ran into millions of dollars, all of it justified by a single principle that defines military service. But even with all this capability, even with clear weather and warm water, they never found him. If this story moved you, leave a word in the comments to honor him. And this is where the harsh reality sets in. The fall itself creates the first problem. Hitting water from 60 feet generates impact forces that can break bones. If someone lands wrong or is knocked unconscious, drowning can happen within seconds. Even if the fall causes no injury, the carrier keeps moving. Distance grows immediately. But here is what most people do not understand about water exposure. 78-degree Fahrenheit water sounds comfortable. People swim in temperatures like that all the time. Yet prolonged immersion without a life jacket leads to exhaustion. The body loses heat 25 times faster in water than in air. Hands stop working. Arms cannot reach for rescue lines. Swimming to stay warm actually speeds up heat loss. The statistics tell the real story. A 50-year Navy analysis examined every man overboard incident from 1970 to 2020. Out of 352 cases, the mortality rate reached 71.9%. More than 7 out of 10 people who go overboard do not come back. For incidents involving aircraft carriers during flight operations, the rate drops slightly to 46.3%. That still means nearly half die, despite everything the Navy does to save them. These numbers reflect a reality that no amount of training or technology can completely overcome. Now, here is what most people do not know. Commanders face one of the hardest decisions in military service. When do you stop? After 48 hours, the search zone becomes so large that finding one person becomes statistically improbable. The search for Rivera Lynch lasted more than 45 hours. Dozens of aircraft flew hundreds of missions. Ships covered thousands of square miles. Despite everything, searchers found nothing. No debris, no life vest, no trace. On July 30th at 12:40 p.m., the decision came down. Active operations were suspended. Rivera Lynch was declared lost at sea. He had enlisted at 17 through the delayed entry program. He graduated high school in June 2024 and immediately shipped to boot camp. His father described him as someone who truly loved the Navy. He had spoken with his dad the morning before he disappeared. Everything seemed fine. When a sailor goes overboard, the Navy responds with everything it has. Helicopters launch immediately. Ships reposition. Rescue swimmers risk their lives. The effort is total, but the ocean remains the one variable no system can control. Technology improves. Training gets better. Procedures are refined through decades of hard lessons. Yet the statistics have not changed much. A warship built to project power anywhere in the world can pivot completely to save one person. And sometimes, despite everything, it is not enough.